picture this, because I am willing to bet you have lived this exact scenario within, like, the last 48 hours.
Oh, at least. Probably this morning.
Right, yeah. So you've just sat down at your desk. You have got a hot cup of coffee right next to you, perfectly brewed.
The essential first step.
Exactly. Your workspace is completely cleared off, and you have deliberately carved out this pristine 2-hour block of time to finally tackle that massive, important project you have been, well, putting off for weeks.
You want hanging over your head?
Yeah, that one. You're ready. You are genuinely motivated. You tell yourself out loud even, I am going to crush this right now.
I know this feeling so well.
But then, and this is where it gets insidious, your hand hovers over the keyboard to type that very first sentence, and this tiny, almost imperceptible thought creeps in.
Let me guess. Just a quick check.
Yes. You think, let me just check my messages real quick, just for a second, just to clear the notifications so I have a totally blank slate and can focus.
It's always just for a second.
Always. So you pick up the device, and the next time you look at the clock, an entire hour has just vanished.
Poof, gone.
Evaporated into the ether. You haven't typed a single word of your project. Instead, you've been scrolling through social media, watching short looping videos you won't even be able to recall tomorrow morning.
Right.
You've read half of an argument between two total strangers about a topic you don't even care about. And that beautiful, pristine block of productive time is just gone.
It is the defining modern tragedy of the knowledge worker.
Yeah.
And really of anyone trying to accomplish anything meaningful today. I mean, we have all lived that exact scenario probably more times than we would ever want to admit to ourselves, let alone anyone else.
And the immediate aftermath of that lost hour is always identical too. It's this intense, suffocating wave of guilt.
Oh, the self-loathing is real.
It is. You sit there in the glow of the monitor, and you just mentally berate yourself. You tell yourself that you are lazy. You tell yourself you have zero discipline.
That you completely lack willpower.
Right. And that if you just tried harder, this wouldn't happen. But here's the thing, and I want to say this directly to you listening right now. If you experience this on a daily basis, you are not lazy.
No, not at all.
You do not lack willpower. You are actually the victim of an incredibly sophisticated, entirely invisible system that has been engineered from the ground up to hijack your attention.
That is the fundamental paradigm shift we have to start with today, because if we are going to solve this, we have to recognize the battlefield we are standing on.
Yeah, it's not a fair fight.
Not even close.
Yeah.
You are trying to guard your attention with a wooden shield while the apps on your phone are using laser-guided behavioral algorithms to pierce it.
The fight is fundamentally asymmetrical.
Exactly. We are living in this unprecedented era where artificial intelligence, world-class neuroscientists, and brilliant marketing experts have effectively weaponized our basic ancient biology against us.
It's almost scary when you put it like that.
It is. They have mapped out the exact neurochemical buttons to push in our brains to keep us trapped in these behavioral loops.
And we are going to figure out how to rebuild our defenses.
Okay.
So today we are diving deep into a summary of a genuinely eye-opening book by Tibamirias called Dopamine Fasting.
Such an important read.
It really is. We are going to decode exactly how your brain is being hijacked on a mechanical, neurochemical level. But we aren't going to just wallow in the doom and gloom of the attention economy.
Right, we need solutions.
Exactly.
Okay.
More importantly, we're going to map out a highly specific, scientifically backed blueprint to take your mind back. So, okay, let's unpack this, because if we want to fix the problem, we first have to completely dismantle a massive misconception about the core culprit itself.
We have to talk about dopamine.
We do.
Yeah.
And we need to redefine it entirely, right?
Yeah.
Because popular culture has completely misunderstood what this molecule actually does in the human brain.
Oh, drastically misunderstood. If you go by what you read on lifestyle blogs or, hear in casual conversation, dopamine is always framed incorrectly.
Right, it's always called the happiness hormone. People talk about getting a hit of dopamine like it is this magical, warm chemical of joy and satisfaction.
Like it's the reward itself.
Yes, like it's the finish line.
Which misses the entire biological purpose of the chemical. Dopamine is not about happiness. It has very little to do with the feeling of satisfaction or contentment, actually.
Wait, really? So it's not the reward?
Not at all. Dopamine is the hormone of expectation. It is the hormone of anticipation, of craving, and of relentless desire.
Wow.
It is the neurochemical mechanism that makes you want something. It is not the chemical that makes you enjoy it once you finally possess it.
That distinction changes everything, honestly. And the source material gives a really visceral way to think about this.
Oh, the restaurant analogy.
Yes. Think about the moment right before you are about to eat your absolute favorite food. Let's say you are at an incredible restaurant, you placed the order 20 minutes ago, and you are starving.
Just waiting.
Yeah, you suddenly see the waiter walking out of the kitchen doors, navigating through the tables, carrying your specific plate.
You lock eyes with the food.
Exactly. That intense longing, that mouth-watering anticipation, that feeling of, I cannot wait another second to consume that, that is dopamine in action.
That's the peak.
Right. It is the drive toward the reward.
Yeah.
But the moment you actually take the bite, the dopamine starts dropping.
Because the pursuit is over. To really understand why our brains are wired this way, you kind of have to pull the lens way back and look at our evolutionary context.
Okay, take us back.
So for hundreds of thousands of years, dopamine was the ultimate survival mechanism. It was the biological engine of human drive.
Because we didn't have Uber Eats.
Right. It pushed our ancestors out of the safety of the cave to go explore dangerous, unknown territories. It drove them to hunt for scarce food when they were exhausted, to brave the elements, and eventually to build tools, agriculture, and cities.
So it's the ultimate motivator.
Without dopamine, early humans would have just sat around the fire feeling completely content until they starved to death.
That's a grim picture.
But true. They needed a chemical reward system that made the pursuit of survival feel incredibly urgent and compelling.
So dopamine is essentially like the drum roll before a magic trick rather than the magic trick itself.
I love that analogy.
It builds the suspense, right? It builds the drive to act. It is the engine, but it is not the destination. And in the ancient world, that engine only got fueled by real life-sustaining achievements.
Exactly. You track an animal across the savannah for 3 days, you finally catch it, and you get a natural dose of dopamine that tells your brain, keep doing this keeps us alive.
Which is precisely why redefining this molecule matters so much today, doesn't it?
It is everything. Because if dopamine is about anticipation and craving, rather than satisfaction, then manipulating a person's anticipation is the absolute easiest way to control their behavior.
Oh, wow. If you control the craving, you control the person.
Exactly. If you can control what someone craves, you control what they do with their time. That ancient survival engine was perfectly calibrated for a world of extreme scarcity where rewards were incredibly hard to come by and required immense physical and mental effort just to survive another day.
But the environment changed. I mean, we took that ancient survival engine, this deeply ingrained biological system built for hunting mammoths and discovering fire, and we just dropped it into the modern digital world.
And it creates a total biological short circuit. You take a brain that evolved to drip feed dopamine for major survival milestones,
Right.
and you place it in an environment where every single ping of your phone, every notification, every like on a photo, every infinitely scrolling short video, and every highly processed, hyper-palatable meal is a massive, entirely unnatural dopamine strike.
The brain has a massive blind spot here, according to the deep dive into the book. From what it explains, your brain is just a biological machine operating in the dark.
He doesn't know what century it's in.
No, it cannot sit back and philosophically distinguish between the dopamine it earned from a real life-building goal like finishing a degree or building a healthy relationship or mastering a skill and the cheap unearned dopamine it gets from watching a 15-second funny video of a cat falling off a table.
To the brain's receptors, it is all just the exact same chemical.
So it treats a TikTok video like catching a mammoth.
Essentially, yes. The brain cannot differentiate the source. It only measures the volume. And the volume of dopamine we are receiving in the modern world is staggering. We are flooding our synapses with levels of dopamine that our ancestors could never have even conceptualized, let alone processed.
But wait, this is where I want to push back a little because there seems to be a paradox here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If dopamine is the molecule of motivation, right, the molecule of drive and action, and we are suddenly getting flooded with massive record-breaking amounts of it all day long, shouldn't we be the most highly motivated, unstoppable generation in human history?
You would think so.
Why does all this dopamine result in us staring blankly at a glowing rectangle for 45 minutes instead of doing our actual work?
What's fascinating here is that that is the core paradox of the modern age. And to understand it, we have to look at how the brain protects itself.
Protects itself from the dopamine.
Yes. The brain operates on a fundamental biological principle called homeostasis. It constantly wants to maintain a delicate chemical balance.
Right, it doesn't want too much of anything.
Exactly. It doesn't want to be constantly overstimulated. That state of hyperarousal is biologically exhausting and, frankly, dangerous. So when you flood the brain with these massive, unnatural spikes of dopamine from your phone or junk food, the brain basically freaks out.
It's too much for the system.
Right. It registers the flood and says, whoa, this is way too much stimulation. I need to turn the volume down to protect the system.
I think I see where this is going. If it turns the volume down on the dopamine itself, or wait, is it doing something else?
It does something called stimulus inflation, specifically receptor downregulation.
Receptor downregulation.
Yeah, the brain literally reduces the physical number of active dopamine receptors available on your neurons. It shuts down the landing pads for the chemical.
That's wild.
Imagine being in a room where someone suddenly turns the music up to a deafening, painful volume. To protect your hearing, you wouldn't just stand there, right? You would put in heavy-duty earplugs.
Yeah, of course.
That is exactly what your brain is doing. It is putting in neurochemical earplugs to block out the overwhelming noise of modern life.
Oh, wow. So the dopamine is still flooding in from the endless scrolling, but your brain is refusing to process it at the same capacity. You are blasting the music, but your brain is wearing earplugs.
Yes, and the consequence of that defense mechanism is absolutely devastating for our daily lives. Because your brain has reduced its receptors, you now have a built-in tolerance.
You need more to feel the same.
Precisely. You need larger and larger doses of dopamine just to feel a baseline level of normal. That 15-second video that used to amuse you a year ago now does nothing for you. So you need a more extreme video, or you need the algorithm to feed you 50 of them in a row at lightning speed just to register a tiny blip of interest.
And the terrifying part is how this bleeds into every other aspect of your life. Because you've downregulated your receptors, normal, healthy, natural activities suddenly feel agonizingly boring.
They can't compete.
Right. Reading a physical book, having a quiet, nuanced conversation with a friend, going for a walk without headphones, working on a complex long-term project, all of these activities produce a normal, healthy amount of dopamine. But because your brain is wearing those heavy-duty earplugs.
It can't even register those small, natural doses anymore.
Exactly.
The brain literally loses its capacity to enjoy reality. The subtle, beautiful, necessary tasks of life become excruciating because they simply cannot compete with the hyperstimulating, carefully engineered blasts of dopamine waiting in your pocket.
So you sit down to do that important project you mentioned at the beginning, and your brain is just screaming at you.
Screaming, there is no reward here. The dopamine drip is too slow. This is starving us. Go to the phone. Go to the easy hit.
The book actually makes a really hard-hitting comparison here. It compares this exact mechanism of stimulus inflation directly to hard drug addiction, specifically cocaine.
Neurologically speaking, the mechanics are remarkably similar. Whether it is a chemical substance introduced into the bloodstream or a behavioral loop triggered by a slot machine-like algorithm on a screen, the resulting dopamine surge and the subsequent receptor downregulation follow the exact same biological pathways.
It's the same mechanism.
It is. The prefrontal cortex gets bypassed, the craving mechanism goes into overdrive, and the tolerance builds. The only difference is legality and proximity.
Right.
Your drug of choice is perfectly legal, socially acceptable, and it lives in your pocket every single minute of the day.
Realizing that we're basically walking around acting like functional addicts is, well, it's a tough pill to swallow. But recognizing that is the first step. If my brain has basically deafened itself to normal joy by wearing these neurochemical earplugs, how do I reverse that?
You need a reset.
Can I just turn the volume dial back down?
That is where the detox comes in. We have to create an environment where the brain feels safe enough to take the earplugs out. Which brings us to the core concept of Thibaut Meurice's work, the dopamine fast.
Okay, let's define this very carefully, because I've seen the term dopamine fasting trending on the internet for years, and it is almost always wildly misunderstood. People make it sound like you are trying to completely stop your brain from producing dopamine altogether.
Which is medically impossible, and it would be incredibly dangerous if you could somehow achieve it. Dopamine is essential for basic motor function. If you had zero dopamine, you would exhibit symptoms similar to severe Parkinson's disease. You wouldn't be able to move.
So it's not about becoming a statue.
Right. So dopamine fasting is not a monk-like vow of total deprivation where you sit in a sterile white room staring at a wall trying to flatline your neurochemistry.
It is a temporary, highly targeted abstinence from artificial, excessive sources of dopamine.
Exactly. The goal is simply to allow your brain the time and space to remove those earplugs, to reset its sensitivity to natural stimuli.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the author uses a brilliant analogy for this process that really clicked for me. Think about sugar.
Oh, this is a great comparison.
If you eat massive amounts of processed sugar every single day, candy bars, sodas, ultra-sweet pastries, your taste buds go completely numb to the sensation of sweetness.
Right, because they're overwhelmed.
Exactly. If someone hands you a fresh apple, it tastes like cardboard. It has no flavor because your baseline for sweetness is artificially sky high. But if you completely stop eating processed sugar for a week or two, and then you bite into a simple natural date or a fresh strawberry,
It explodes with flavor.
yes, it tastes unbelievably, incredibly sweet. It almost tastes like candy. Your taste buds have reset their baseline. The dopamine fast does exactly this, but for your brain's pleasure and motivation centers.
And that biological reset serves three very specific goals outlined in the fast. The first, as your sugar analogy perfectly illustrates, is resetting those receptors so you can actually enjoy the simple, vital, everyday things again. You want to get to a place where reading a book or taking a walk feels genuinely rewarding.
And the second goal.
The second goal is to forcefully break the vicious automated cycle of digital distraction.
Oh,
We have to sever that unconscious muscle memory habit of reaching for the phone the millisecond we feel bored or uncomfortable.
so if we're resetting receptors and breaking the digital loop,
Yeah.
it sounds to me like the third goal is essentially just relearning how to be patient, like forcing our brains to remember how to wait for a reward.
That is exactly it. The third goal is to rebuild your capacity for delayed gratification. This is the ability to put in intense effort now for a reward that might not materialize for months or even years.
Which is the ultimate trait of high achievers.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of a human life, every single meaningful accomplishment, getting a difficult degree, building a business from scratch, raising a healthy child, writing a novel, getting into great physical shape, every single one of these requires delayed gratification.
You don't get the payoff on day one.
Exactly. They require you to do hard, sometimes incredibly boring work day after day without any immediate neurochemical reward. When your brain is hooked on instant, cheap dopamine hits, you literally lose the neurological hardware necessary to pursue long-term goals.
Because your brain demands the payoff right now.
Exactly. So this fast isn't just some trendy Silicon Valley productivity hack to help you answer more emails. It is a fundamental rewiring of how you pursue meaning and success in your life.
Okay, I am completely sold on the premise. But before we can fast, we have to know exactly what we are fasting from. We can't just vaguely say, I'm going to be better and use my phone less today. We need to identify the specific enemies. And the source material breaks these down into 6 major categories of dopamine drains.
Let's walk through them because they are deeply embedded in almost everyone's daily routines. The first and most obvious category is tech and the internet. And we are specifically talking about smartphones and algorithmic social media, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. We need to stop viewing these as communication tools. They are 247 dopamine laboratories.
And they use very specific psychological tricks, right? Like variable reward schedules.
Yes, the variable reward schedule is the exact mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive. When you pull to refresh your feed, you never know what you are going to get.
Right. It's a gamble.
It might be a boring ad, it might be a mild update from a friend, or it might be a highly controversial, emotionally charged video. Because the reward is unpredictable, your brain produces a massive anticipatory dopamine spike every time you swipe. The algorithms are constantly adjusting to maximize that anticipation.
The second category is junk food. And the book highlights that this isn't just about calories or willpower. Processed foods are literally engineered in food laboratories by scientists who manipulate the ratios of sugar, fat, and salt.
They call it the bliss point in the food industry.
The bliss point. That just sounds manipulative.
Oh, it is. By layering those three elements in unnatural combinations, they completely bypass your body's natural satiety signals. If you eat a steak or a bowl of broccoli, your body eventually tells you, I am full, stop eating. But the bliss point in a bag of engineered potato chips spikes your dopamine so hard that the craving overrides the fullness signal.
So you just keep eating.
You literally cannot stop eating it because your brain is treating it like a rare, high-value survival resource.
Wow. The third category is one people often overlook, and I definitely fall victim to this. Thrills and stimulants in the form of information. We are talking about the endless 24-hour news cycle, the scandal content, the outrage bait, the endless true crime binges.
This type of content is uniquely destructive because it spikes your cortisol, your primary stress hormone, and your dopamine simultaneously.
Stress and reward at the same time.
Exactly. When you read a terrifying headline, your brain thinks there is a survival threat nearby. It creates a massive sense of arousal and urgency. You keep scrolling to find more information to protect yourself, which is the dopamine drive.
But you're just sitting on your couch.
Right. It adds absolute zero practical value to your daily life. You can't control the geopolitical event happening 5,000 miles away. The scrolling just leaves your nervous system completely drained and chronically
The
anxious.
classic doom scrolling effect.
Yeah.
Okay, number 4 is caffeine and natural stimulants. Now, the book isn't saying coffee is inherently evil, but we need to understand the mechanism. How does caffeine actually work?
Think of a chemical in your brain called adenosine, like sand in an hourglass. When you wake up, the hourglass flips over. As the sand fills the bottom throughout the day, you feel progressively sleepier. That is adenosine building up.
Okay, makes sense.
When you drink coffee, the caffeine doesn't empty the sand, it just puts a physical cork in the sensor so your brain can't feel the sand accumulating.
So you're still tired, you just don't know it.
Exactly. At the same time, it forces the release of adrenaline and dopamine. If you are drinking 5 cups a day, you are throwing your chemical balance completely out of whack. You are relying on an external substance just to artificially generate baseline motivation, and when the caffeine wears off, all that accumulated adenosine hits you at once in a massive crash.
That explains the 3 p.m. slump. Category 5 is video games. And honestly, we have to acknowledge how brilliantly these are designed. The leveling systems, the loot boxes, the skill trees, these are perfectly calibrated to exploit the brain's anticipation mechanisms. You play for 3 hours to unlock a new sword, and the anticipation of getting that sword keeps you locked in.
They provide a false sense of achievement that perfectly mimics the dopamine profile of real-world success. Your brain thinks you are mastering a vital survival skill, but it traps you in a closed, virtual loop that doesn't translate to your actual life.
And the final category, number 6, is compulsive shopping. This one is fascinating because e-commerce has basically weaponized our hunter-gatherer instinct.
It really has.
We used to scour the savannah looking for berries. Now we scour the Amazon UI looking for deals. And the crazy part about the neuroscience here is that the dopamine spike doesn't happen when the Amazon package actually arrives at your door.
Not at all. The arrival of the package is almost an afterthought. The massive dopamine spike happens when you are browsing, reading the reviews, comparing options, adding it to the cart, and clicking purchase.
The hunt.
You are anticipating the acquisition. Merely swiping through endless products without even buying them destroys your focus because your brain is engaged in a low-stakes, high-reward hunt for novelty.
So I want to pause for a second and just ask you directly, the listener. Take a moment right now. Look at those 6 categories. Tech and social media, engineered junk food, outrage news, excessive caffeine, video games, and e-commerce. Which of those 6 has their hooks in you the deepest?
We all have at least one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which one made you wince a little bit when we described the mechanics of it? Be brutally honest with yourself because your answer to that question is your personal starting line.
If you look closely at that list of 6 strains, there is a very dark, common thread running through all of them.
What's that?
All 6 of these categories are engineered by massive external commercial forces. They are designed by corporations to keep you relentlessly engaged. They are extracting your most valuable, non-renewable resources, your time, your attention, and your cognitive energy, and converting them into their profit.
They're literally farming our attention.
Yes. When you give in to these drains, you aren't just losing focus. You are actively enriching someone else at the direct expense of your own life's potential.
That is incredibly chilling when you frame it like that. It is an extraction economy, and we are the resource. Okay, so the enemies have been identified. They are everywhere, and they're powerful. But how do we actually defeat them? Because if I listen to this and get highly motivated and say, right, tomorrow morning I am throwing my smartphone in the river, I'm eating only raw vegetables, and I'm living in the woods, I am going to fail by 2:00 p.m.
The author is very explicit on this point. The cold turkey approach fails 99% of the time. You cannot take a brain that has been bathed in hyperstimulation for years and plunge it into an absolute sensory void overnight.
It's too much of a shock.
The neurological shock is simply too great. The cravings will completely override your willpower, you will inevitably binge on the distraction to relieve the anxiety, and then you will feel immense shame, which just drives you right back to the comforting distraction to numb the shame. It is a terrible cycle.
So what's the alternative?
We need a systematic, gradual approach, a true detox protocol.
The book outlines a multi-phase blueprint for survival. And phase 1 is fascinating to me because you actually don't change a single one of your habits at first.
Nope, nothing changes.
Phase 1 is diagnosis. It is the scientist approach. For an entire week, your only job is to observe yourself. You carry around a physical notebook, and every single time you find yourself opening your phone without a specific utilitarian reason or walking to the fridge when you aren't actually hungry, you just log it. You write down the time, what you opened, and what you were feeling right before you did it.
It sounds tedious, but it's crucial.
Now, I'll admit, my immediate reaction when reading this step was resistance. Journaling my failures 50 times a day feels like it's just going to make me feel terrible about myself. Like, here is a physical ledger of exactly how weak my willpower is.
It is a very common reaction, but it requires a vital cognitive reframe. This phase is not about guilt. A scientist does not judge the bacteria in the petri dish. They merely observe its behavior under different conditions.
I'm just observing the bacteria.
This is purely about data collection. You cannot fight an invisible enemy. You have to map out your specific triggers. When you look at that log after a week, indisputable patterns will emerge.
Like,
Are you reaching for Instagram because you are genuinely interested in photography? Or are you opening it every single time you feel a wave of anxiety about an upcoming deadline at work? Are you eating the junk food because you are nutritionally hungry or because you are incredibly lonely at 9:00 p.m.? Are you opening a mobile game because of fatigue?
so it's about the emotional driver.
You have to understand the emotional architecture of your distraction before you can begin to dismantle it.
So once we have the data, once we see the patterns, we move to phase 2, which is gradual fasting. This is a multi-week timeline. Week 1 is remarkably gentle. You pick just one distraction from your data log, let's say it's TikTok,
Yeah.
and you cut it by 50%.
Just half.
That's it.
Hmm.
If your phone data says you spend 2 hours a night scrolling, you set a hard timer and you cut it to 1 hour.
The brilliance of this approach is the emphasis on consistency over speed. We are trying to prove to the primitive part of the brain that it can survive with less dopamine without triggering a panic response.
Right. And then what about week 2?
Then, in week 2, you maintain that first reduction and you add a second distraction to the list. Maybe you cut your video game time in half, or you completely stop reading the news after dinner. It is a slow, methodical ratcheting down of the stimulation.
Week 3 is when things start to get real. You do a 24-hour mini fast. You pick one full day and you completely eliminate your major dopamine drains for just that one day. It is a test run for the big event because week 4 is the pinnacle of the protocol, the weekend fast, from Friday night until Sunday morning.
This is phase 3, the DUP reset. Once a month, you commit to 2 full days with 0 digital distractions. No smartphone, no television, no social media, no video games, no hyper-processed junk food. You unplug the router if you have to. You exist entirely in the analog world.
Let's talk about what actually happens to you during that intense weekend fast, because the book's description of reality during this phase is quite jarring. It definitely doesn't sound like a relaxing spa retreat, at least not at first.
The initial phase of the weekend fast is profoundly uncomfortable.
Yeah, the book describes this visceral, almost phantom limb sensation. You will be sitting on your couch on a Saturday morning, and your hand will just automatically, unconsciously reach into your pocket to grab a phone that isn't there.
I felt that.
You will physically feel a phantom vibration against your leg. And then the anxiety hits. The first few hours, your brain is essentially panicking. It feels like you are missing something vital, like you've left the stove on.
The FOMO is intense.
The silence of your own house will feel deafening. You will pace around the room, feeling this itchy, restless need for input.
That anxiety is literal neurochemical withdrawal. Your brain is desperately searching for the easy, high-volume dopamine hit it is accustomed to receiving every 10 minutes. But if you can push through that initial wall of discomfort, if you can just sit with the anxiety, observe it, and not surrender to it,
What happens?
a profound psychological shift occurs. Usually by Saturday afternoon, the panic subsides. It is replaced by an incredible, expansive sense of calm. Your perception of time fundamentally changes.
Time changes.
Yes, days feel wonderfully long and spacious again instead of flashing by in a blur of glowing screens. And most importantly, your capacity for deep, unbroken, sequential thinking returns.
But I can't just sit in an empty room staring at the wall all weekend waiting for my perception of time to change. I'd go crazy. What am I supposed to do when those phantom phone vibrations hit?
You have to give the brain natural, slow-drip dopamine. You replace the digital drains with healthy, analog alternatives.
Right, and the book is very specific about these healthy replacements. Physical movement is a massive one. getting out into nature. And this isn't just poetic transcendentalist advice.
No, there is hard biological science here. Just 20 minutes of walking in a natural environment, a park, a forest, anywhere with trees and greenery, significantly reduces cortisol levels, lowers your heart rate, and provides a gentle, natural reset for your dopamine pathways.
So just looking at a tree helps.
There is something about the fractal patterns in nature that inherently calms the human nervous system.
That's amazing. Another vital replacement mentioned is reading physical books. Reading is essentially weightlifting for your attention span. It forces your brain to follow a linear, sustained narrative over hours or days, which directly repairs the cognitive muscles that have severely atrophied from years of jumping between 5-second disjointed videos.
Writing is also heavily recommended, whether it is journaling, brain dumping, or outlining long-term goals. Taking the swirling, anxious chaos of your thoughts and organizing them into physical words on a piece of paper is incredibly therapeutic.
It slows you down.
Exactly. It forces your brain to slow down to the speed of your pen, and it releases a very healthy, stabilizing form of dopamine as you complete thoughts and sentences.
Meditation is another powerful tool during the fast. And you don't need to sit in a lotus position for 3 hours. Just 10 minutes of sitting quietly, focusing on the physical sensation of your breathing and continually bringing your attention back when it wanders.
Which is hard at first.
Very hard. But this practice has been shown in functional MRI scans to physically alter brain chemistry, thickening the prefrontal cortex and strengthening the neural pathways associated with impulse control.
Getting your hands dirty with real-world physical hobbies is huge, too. Cooking a complex meal from scratch where you have to chop vegetables and manage timing. Gardening, painting, fixing a bicycle, building a birdhouse.
Why does that work so well?
You are manipulating physical matter in three-dimensional space to build something tangible, which hits those ancient evolutionary triggers for reward that we talked about earlier. You put in physical effort, and you get a tangible result.
And finally, perhaps the most important replacement. Real social connection. We are not talking about leaving a fire emoji on someone's photo. We are talking about sitting down for a deep, uninterrupted conversation with another human being, where you are looking into their eyes, reading their micro-expressions, hearing the inflection in their voice, and being truly entirely present.
That level of connection generates some of the most powerful, regulating, and fulfilling dopamine our brains can produce.
It sounds almost romantic, honestly, like a return to a simpler, more intentional way of living before the screens took over. But as we hinted at, this isn't just lifestyle advice or nostalgia. There is hard biological neuroscience proving exactly why this weekend reset works. Let's break down the physical changes happening under the hood when we do this.
When you remove the artificial hyperstimulation during this fast, 3 distinct biological events occur. We already touched on the first. Receptor multiplication.
Taking out the earplugs.
Yes. Because the brain is suddenly starved of its massive artificial dopamine floods, it desperately wants to catch whatever small amounts of natural dopamine are floating around from your walk or your conversation. So it rapidly generates more dopamine receptors. It literally takes the earplugs out.
So you can hear the quiet sounds again.
This is why, after a weekend fast, a simple cup of tea, a good chapter in a book, or a quiet walk feels intensely pleasurable again. Your hardware has been upgraded to feel joy from the simple things.
The second biological change is massive. It involves the prefrontal cortex. Now think about yesterday. When you told yourself you were going to the gym after work, that was your prefrontal cortex talking. It is the CEO of your brain.
The adult in the room.
Right. It is responsible for long-term planning, logical decision-making, and impulse control. But when you ended up on the couch watching 3 hours of streaming video instead, that was your primitive reptilian brain hijacking the system for easy dopamine.
Exactly. When you are constantly distracted and endlessly scrolling, you are living in those primitive reactive parts of your brain. The CEO gets paralyzed.
And the fast changes that.
The dopamine fast physically brings the prefrontal cortex back online. It wakes the CEO up, clears the fog, and puts him back in charge of the company.
So what does this all mean? Oh, wait, what's the third change?
The third major biological shift is the sleep and energy cycle reset. We have fundamentally broken our circadian rhythms by staring at blue light emitting screens until the very moment we close our eyes.
Oh, the midnight scrolling.
Our brains are constantly being tricked by the light spectrum into thinking it is high noon, even at 11:30 p.m. Disconnecting from screens for a full weekend removes that artificial light, allowing your pineal gland's natural melatonin production to kick back in, resetting your biological clock.
You actually sleep.
You finally experience truly restorative, deep REM sleep, which clears out the metabolic waste in your brain.
So what does this all mean in practice? We have the theory and we have the biology, but does this actually translate to real-world results? The book cites a brilliant Stanford University study that completely validates this entire protocol.
Oh, that study is incredible.
They took a group of heavy social media users and simply had them reduce, not even eliminate entirely, just significantly reduce their social media usage for just 3 weeks.
And the results were absolutely astounding.
In less than a month, these participants reported a massive, statistically significant drop in anxiety and depressive symptoms, coupled with a huge spike in their daily focus, their self-reported happiness, and their overall productivity.
Just 3 weeks of reduced input was enough to physically heal the brain and dramatically improve their quality of life.
The science is irrefutable, the mechanisms are proven, but knowing the science and successfully executing the plan over the long term are two very different things. Despite all this knowledge, people still mess this up constantly. The path to recovery is littered with psychological traps.
It is so easy to fall into them.
So let's talk about the sabotage. How to avoid failing. The source outlines 4 incredibly common mistakes people make when attempting a dopamine fast. Mistake number 1 is the all-or-nothing trap.
I talked about this a bit earlier.
Right. This is the person who listened to a deep dive like this, gets highly motivated on a Sunday night, deletes every app off their phone, throws out all the junk food in their pantry, unplugs their TV, and vows to live like an ascetic monk from now on.
And we know how that ends.
By Tuesday afternoon, their brain goes into severe withdrawal panic. They crack under the pressure, reinstall everything, binge for 5 hours straight to numb the failure, and then feel so defeated they never try the fast again.
The fix for that is what we discussed with the gradual phases. Small, steady, methodical steps. Consistency always beats intensity. You have to train the brain slowly.
Mistake number 2 is swapping distractions. This one is incredibly sneaky. You proudly declare you are quitting Twitter and Instagram for the weekend.
Yeah.
Amazing. You put the phone in a drawer,
Great start.
but then you sit on the couch and binge watch a television series for 9 hours straight. You haven't actually fasted from dopamine, you just changed the flavor of the junk food.
You just traded one screen for another.
The fix here is that you must replace the digital drains with the natural low-stimulation alternatives we talked about. Nature, reading, creating. Otherwise, you're just shifting the addiction from a small screen to a big screen.
Mistake number 3 is unrealistic expectations. People expect a total, miraculous life transformation in one weekend. They expect to suddenly be capable of writing a best-selling novel in 48 hours, just because they turn their phone off.
And when they don't,
When Monday rolls around and they still feel a bit tired or unmotivated, they declare the entire fast a failure and go right back to scrolling. The fix is to shift your timeline. Aim for just 1% better every day. It took you years of heavy usage to fry your dopamine receptors. It is going to take more than a single weekend to permanently heal them.
but the final mistake. This is where the book stops being a productivity manual.
Right.
It gets deeply psychological. Mistake number 4 is failing to address the root cause of the distraction.
This raises an important question, right? Because this is the crux of the entire issue. Why are you reaching for the phone in the first place? Yes, we know the algorithms are addictive and the UI is designed to trap you.
Right, but there's more to it.
Very often, we actively seek out these distractions as a highly effective numbing agent. We are using the noise of the internet to run away from something painful in our real lives.
Like what?
It might be a deep-seated fear of failure, because if you never actually start writing that business plan because you are busy scrolling, you can never fail at the business. It might be a profound lack of purpose in your career, and the games give you a false sense of progress. It might be a crushing sense of loneliness in your marriage, and the parasocial relationships on the internet make you feel seen.
I really want to drive this home for you listening because this is the hardest part of the entire protocol. During your weekend detox, when the screens are finally off, when the TV is unplugged and the house is completely quiet, you are going to be left entirely alone with your own thoughts.
No escape.
There is no background noise to drown them out. And in that silence, you have to bravely look in the mirror and ask yourself the terrifying question, what am I actually running from when I instinctively reach for my phone?
It's a heavy question.
If you don't answer that question, the dopamine fast is just a temporary Band-Aid on a bullet wound. The distraction will always creep back into your life, no matter how many apps you delete, because the underlying pain you are trying to numb is still there, waiting for you.
Facing that silence is daunting, but it is the only way to clear the junk out of your psychological basement. And once you do face it, once you clear away the constant noise, the artificial stimulation, and the avoidance tactics, you are left with an incredible opportunity. You have a blank slate. You have your attention back.
So if our joy is no longer numb and we have our attention back, how do we rebuild? Because dopamine fasting isn't the end goal itself. You don't just fast forever and live in the woods.
Right, it's just the foundation.
The fast is simply clearing the land so you can pour the foundation for a completely new, high-achievement life system. The book details 3 mandatory rules to install in this new architecture of your life. Rule number 1, the mandatory time rule, also known in other circles as deep work.
Crucial concept.
You must carve out 1 hour every single day with 0 distractions. No phone in the room, no email tabs open, no notifications, no background TV. Just you, intensely focused on your most vital, needle-moving task. And the incredible thing is, the text notes that this 1 hour of pristine, highly focused, deep work will yield more actual, tangible output than 8 hours of the distracted, fragmented work most people do, sitting at their desks, toggling between spreadsheets and social media.
The contrast in output and quality is staggering when you actually experience it. Rule number 2 is the first hour morning rule. The data on this is striking. 91% of highly successful people do not touch their smartphones within the first hour of waking up.
I have to admit, when I first read that, it sounded absolutely brutal. My alarm goes off on my phone, and it is so incredibly tempting to just lie there in the warmth of the bed for 5 minutes and check email, or see what happened on the timeline while I was asleep. It feels harmless.
It is the most common habit in the modern world, but neurologically, it is absolute self-sabotage.
Really? Just from 5 minutes?
Yes. The first hour of your day sets the neurological vibration, the chemical trajectory for your entire waking period. When you open a social media app or stressful news site while you are still lying in bed, you are instantly flooding a rested, highly plastic brain with high arousal dopamine and cortisol.
So you're basically shocking the system awake.
You are fundamentally training your brain in its most impressionable state of the day that today is a day for fragmented distraction, stress, and instant gratification. If you protect that first hour, if you use it to read, stretch, plan your day, or just drink your coffee in silence, you set a trajectory of intention, calm, and control that carries through all the way to the evening.
That makes total sense. You are taking control of the steering wheel before the algorithm can grab it. And the evening brings us to rule number 3, the digital sunset.
Very important.
You must stop looking at all screens 1 to 2 hours before you intend to sleep. We touched on this earlier with the circadian rhythm. The blue light from phones and laptops literally destroys your brain's natural ability to produce melatonin.
It tricks the brain.
If you are scrolling in bed, your brain thinks the sun is shining directly into your eyes. You might eventually fall asleep because your body's exhausted, but the quality of that sleep, the depth of the REM cycles, will be terrible, leaving you drained the next day and more susceptible to cheap dopamine cravings.
Implementing those 3 rules, the deep work, the first hour, and the digital sunset, creates an impenetrable fortress around your focus and your energy.
We've talked so much about protecting our productivity and our work output, but I can't help but feel like we're missing the bigger tragedy here. If I'm hyper-focused on an app, it's not just my spreadsheet or my novel that's suffering. The book reveals a much more heartbreaking casualty of our dopamine addiction.
Yeah.
We aren't just losing our ability to work, we are losing our human relationships. The book paints this picture, and it is so painfully familiar. You walk into a nice restaurant, and you see couples on a date, sitting across from each other, completely silent, both staring down at their glowing hands.
That's everywhere.
Or a parent comes home from work, their child runs up to greet them, and the parent says hello, without ever actually taking their eyes off the screen.
It is devastating to witness. Human relationships are the ultimate silent victim of the attention economy, because true, deep human connection requires the rarest and most valuable commodity of our time: complete undivided presence.
You can't fake it.
You cannot deeply connect with your partner or your child if your prefrontal cortex is simultaneously processing an email from your boss and a political argument on Twitter. Connection requires sustained eye contact, active listening, picking up on nonverbal cues, and emotional resonance, all of which are completely impossible when your brain is aggressively hunting for its next cheap dopamine hit from the device in your hand.
So how do we fix this? How do we re-engage with the people sitting right in front of us? The book talks about generating positive dopamine, the antidote to the cheap stuff. We have to retrain our brains to find joy in long-term, meaningful pursuits that build us up rather than tear our attention down.
And setting big, audacious life goals and breaking them down into small daily steps is a major one. Every time you cross off one of those small steps, you get a natural, earned hit of positive dopamine that pushes you to the next step.
Continuous learning is another massive source of positive dopamine. The human brain evolved to learn and adapt. Taking up a new language, learning to play an instrument, mastering a complex new skill, these provide a slow, steady, incredibly satisfying drip of positive dopamine that builds structural integrity in the brain.
Daily exercise is also critical. At least 30 minutes of sustained movement completely flushes and resets your stress hormones while providing a massive natural neurochemical reward that stabilizes your mood for hours afterward.
And here's a fascinating one from the study cited in the text. Serving others and volunteering. Doing things for other people without any expectation of return actually provides the longest-lasting, most stable release of positive dopamine observed in psychological studies. It fundamentally fulfills our evolutionary need for tribal cohesion and shared purpose.
To protect these positive pursuits, we have to adopt a daily philosophy of digital awareness. We are not Luddites. We are not saying technology is inherently evil or that the internet is entirely bad.
Right, it's just a tool.
The goal is to live with technology as a highly leveraged tool, not under it as an absolute master. The book offers a brilliant, practical framework for maintaining this balance every single day. They call it the 3 questions.
The 3 questions. I love this part.
Before you unlock your phone and open any app, you must force yourself to pause and ask yourself 3 things.
Question number 1. Why am I opening this? Do I have a specific actionable goal, like checking the weather for my commute, or messaging a friend to confirm dinner plans, or am I just feeling bored and anxious?
Question number 2, how much time do I actually need to accomplish this specific goal? If I just need to check the weather, I need exactly 15 seconds. I don't need to spend 20 minutes on the app.
And question number 3, which is the most important one. Will I feel better or worse about myself after I spend time on this app?
If you force yourself to answer those 3 questions every single time your hand reaches for the phone, you introduce friction into the system. You wake up the prefrontal cortex, the CEO, and interrupt the automated, zombie-like habit loop of the primitive brain.
And the book gives some great practical hacks to enforce this friction too. Keep the phone physically out of your bedroom. Buy a cheap $10 traditional alarm clock so you have absolutely no excuse to have the phone on your nightstand.
A life-changing tip, honestly.
Hide your most addictive apps in folders on the 3rd page of your home screen so you can't just tap them blindly through muscle memory. Utilize the screen time limits built into your operating system and have a partner or a friend set the passcode so you literally cannot bypass it when the craving hits.
Taking all of this into account, the true message of T-Bow Maurice's work begins to reveal itself. It is something much deeper, much more profound than just a sterile productivity hack telling you to put your phone down so you can work harder.
Exactly. As we bring this all together, that is the final provocative thought I want to leave you with. This book isn't really about making you a more efficient worker bee for your employer. It isn't about squeezing 4 more emails into your afternoon. The true thesis of dopamine fasting is about the terrifying, beautiful task of finding actual meaning in a hyperstimulating world.
Yes.
Think about it. When you finally execute this fast, when you turn off the external noise, when the notifications finally stop buzzing, when the endless, numbing scroll of other people's curated lives goes dark, you are finally forced to sit in the quiet.
The absolute quiet.
And in that quiet, stripped of all your digital armor and your numbing agents, you have to ask yourself the hardest, most beautiful questions a human being can ask. What do I actually want out of my brief, finite time on this planet? What makes my life truly worth living? When all is said and done, what legacy am I leaving behind for the people I love?
You cannot possibly hear the answers to those questions if your internal voice is drowned out by the constant noise of 1,000 algorithms screaming for your attention. Reclaiming your dopamine isn't about restriction. It isn't about punishing yourself or denying yourself pleasure. It is the ultimate act of liberation. It is about rediscovering your own internal voice, the voice you've been systematically drowning out for years.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. From ancient evolutionary survival mechanisms to the subtle neuroscience of modern digital addiction, and we've laid out a concrete, actionable plan to take your mind back. So my challenge to you listening right now is simple. Try it today. Just for 1 hour. Turn the phone completely off, put it in a drawer in another room, sit in the silence, let the anxiety pass, and see what your mind has been desperately trying to tell you all this time. We will catch you on the next deep dive.